RW down here in the Mountain Storm workshop working on a custom reservoir, and I'm going to share an acrylic fab tip with you about assembly strategy. A basic strategy is once you think you've got all your parts right, mock it up. Don't just start gluing. Tape that thing together, have a good look at it, make sure everything is everything. Check your dimensions again. Make sure everything's going to do what you think it's going to do. Let me show you how this reservoir is constructed to spec. This is the customer's design. Okay. So here's the face plate. Here's a side plate. The customer wants a ½ inch from the face, ½ inch from here, ½ inch from here, ½ inch there, ½ inch there. Wants a port centered right there above this wall. He wants a port centered between this space and side to side. Wants this to be in the center. Wants 2 ports, 5/8 off this zone here. And he wants it split so it's in thirds and they fall on the intersections. On the bottom, he wants the ports 5/8 by 5/8 off of the surfaces on the inside. Okay, so I take a look at all that. All that looks good. Now I have to come up with a strategy. How am I going to assemble this, and what's the most effective way to do it? Well, first of all, any parts that I can do at one time, I want to do it one time. So I would create a wood block that's from here to there to help me line this up, because once I pull the paper off, there's no lines there to guide me. It'll also help me square it up, because I have a perfectly parallel, perfectly square little wood block. It's going to help me square it up. All I got to do is put that block right there. I could even just tape it to the side to hold it there, get everything to line up, fuse it with acrylic cement, and pull the block away. And that piece, just let that set up and it can go in later. It's the same idea here, because this could be glued at one time. So I can come up with a block, okay, that goes from the outside edge to there, so I can just line that up, glue this up. But this is a little trickier because I have to accommodate this side. So I'm definitely going to want a piece of this scrap material underneath the corner edge of that to prop it up. So it's going to be a little hinky. I've got to have a wood block, got to have a little spacer, all that kind of thing, if I want to lay it on there just right. Okay, and of course, so I'm not fighting gravity, I would fuse that one up like this. So wood block, little spacer, just something I can check with, get everything lined up exactly right. Then I got to think about what's the best possible way to get this thing glued up. Well, I would start by putting this piece on first. I would get that glued up like that. And then that's going to allow me to glue my back up perfectly square. So in some ways it behooves me, it puts hoofs under me, right, to do these actually almost at the same time. So I have to be prepared for that. And you can see how I've got it hinged with tape. I can do that exact same thing, just a little better, a little more precisely. Okay, so that I can basically hold this off a little bit, leak some water-thin acrylic solvent under it, let it drop, it fuses, then I can have this hinged, I can leak some acrylic solvent underneath that, and let that hinge, okay? In some ways, okay, it makes it easier to have the bottom on before, this is the bottom panel, before the back panel goes on, because then I'm hinging up against both of them. In theory, that's a wonderful thing. It also makes it extremely difficult for me to get in there with my capillary applicator. So here's another strategy. Are you going to block yourself from being able to even apply the cement? So actually, at this point, once I had these 3 glued up, that's when I would have a block that goes from there to there that shows me exactly where this has to go. And I've already got this assembled, and I would have a little ½ inch spacer block so I could check my spacing and make sure that's dead nuts. So basically, if this is right, everything else should be right. Because everything's going to be square when it gets fused up. So, got to have a few little wood blocks that I have to make just to check things with and get things to fall together correctly. Okay. So that allows me to get in there with my applicator. And if I were to have the bottom on there, it would be really tough. I would have to be going down like this, and it could be a real mess. With this, I can come at a nice angle, and I can fuse all of that. So then obviously, the next thing that would be good to put on would be the side, because I can't put this on until I have the other side on, because it traps the sides. So once that's looking right, this is the part where it's problematic to get any kind of hinging action to help yourself out. You know, if I can't really cover this whole thing with this first, it just doesn't work that way. So basically what I'd be doing is I'd be flipping it over. So this is all laying flush. And then I would have it flipped, and I would be able to lift the whole reservoir up just a touch so I could get that little tiny gap to help everything get really wet. Because with this thick material, unlike 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch where it'll just leak right under it, there's a tendency for it to go halfway sometimes. It doesn't go all the way through. And I want a totally wet joint, so I do have to cheat a little bit. I have to lift it a little bit. It's not going to just creep under there like I'd like if it was thinner material. And then of course, once all that's done, you can see how this could hinge on pretty well. This is not the right piece. You can see how this could hinge on pretty well. And I can, you know, so I'm not fighting gravity at this point. Everything's fused up, and I could have it this way, and I could wet out my joints, get it like this, and then wet that joint out and just move it just a smidge so everything is nice and wet. So that's how you can form a strategy for how to assemble something as complicated as this. Obviously the face is your last thing, and you'd have your face down like that so you could see how it's lining up on it. Or you could peel all the paper off of it, look through it, and have this thing sitting on its back, on its back plate. You can see everything fell apart, but the theory would be you could see right through it, and you want it flush top and bottom on this particular reservoir, and you want a little overhang on either side that's equidistant. So theoretically, you could hinge this piece on with a piece of tape, wet everything, or get it very, very close and wet everything, and then just let it fall down. And then you can have wet joints throughout. So that's the end of this video on assembly strategy. Just to show you there's more to it than just grabbing a hold of your capillary glue applicator and going slambacious with it and just slapping glue all over the place. You've got to think about how best to get nice wet joints and put it all together, especially with thick material like this. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you found that edificational.